Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Happiness in Higher Ed podcast. My name is John Hill, and I use he, him pronouns. Today's guest, this is actually episode 16, and today's guest is Jackie Martinez. So before I introduce Jackie, I will read off our mission statement real quickly. So, in a world that can be engulfed in darkness, we must shine bright and lead the change for a better future. As we continue to shape and challenge emerging adults' minds, it is also our duty to reflect and remember what makes us happy and why we continue to do the work that we do. So without further ado and continuing on with the streak, I will now formally introduce Jackie. So Jackie was born and raised in California. She is the proud daughter of immigrant parents and siblings with a mixed family or mixed status family. She is currently pursuing a master's of education in educational administration at the University of Sioux Falls, not Sinks. I thought it was Sinks, but it's Sioux, so Sioux Falls. Jackie has earned her BA in nonprofit and public administration from CSU Monterey Bay, where I actually met Jackie. She is a first generation student, the first woman in her family to pursue a BA and to pursue a master's. In her free time, Jackie is an avid music listener, Marvel watcher, hot Cheeto eater, and loves yoga, reading, and writing. She is inspired by sunlight, her family, bell hooks, and resiliency. Jackie is passionate about intersectional social justice and being an advocate within her Mexican, queer, and female identities. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, that's pretty good.
Okay.
I mean, I wrote it, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. No, that's fair. That is very fair. So, and I'm very thankful that I asked you beforehand on how to say it, because I would have just rolled off and said Sinks Falls. And
too.
Yeah, it's just the IOUX. Just hear.
It throws a lot of people off. My sisters, at this point, they're unbothered. They're like, yeah, she goes to school that way.
That way. Yeah. I mean, the times that we were RA staff together, I never would have thought that you would have gone to South Dakota. Got you. All right. So without further ado, I'm just going to roll into the questions if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. So what was the reason you started to pursue a career in higher education? And it better just not be, it was Andrew.
Surprisingly, it's not. And I know
okay.
He's going to hate to hear that. He's going to hate it. He hates it every time. Man, there was just like a myriad, and I'm going to use that word because, I'm following Tony. So I need to bring my A game.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of reasons as to why I started. When I graduated high school, I had, like a bunch of students, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And my family always encouraged me to do higher education because it was the only way out for us. It was the only way out of poverty. My dad worked long days in the fields, and in Bakersfield is high. It gets to be like 113 in the summer. So he would be doing labor out in those temperatures, and he would come home, like his hands would be calloused. He would take his boots off. He would be exhausted. Like he couldn't even just enjoy his day and enjoy his peace because he'd be so exhausted. Mm-hmm. And the only way to not do that was to do higher education. And so even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I applied. I had now that I realize I had a lot of help in applying, because there was this college program at my high school. And I think that, looking back now, was like the first little sprinkle of higher ed in my life. But yeah, it was like an early education program, and they took us to trips to colleges.
Was it Avid?
No, I wasn't
Avid. Okay.
No, okay. We had Avid though. It was EOP, EOAP. And yeah, they helped us with resumes and all that good stuff. And at first I just went because they have free pizza, which now that I think about it is like genius, because we were in low income communities. So like if you didn't have anything to eat, like you could go and get some free pizza, and then I got you, like we're gonna help you out with college. like genius.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to that. They helped me apply. I got into CSUMB, and initially I wanted to go with my best friend. And we didn't get to go together. But shout out her because she's amazing to this day, the best. And yeah, and so I applied, and I for the first 2 years I didn't know what I wanted to do. I forgot what I started off majoring in. But the second year, like I said, I started um, just taking classes on like Chicanx studies and exposing myself to diversity. Even though I grew up in like Latinx, a majority of Latinx and uh, like Black communities, um, I didn't know anything else, so I didn't know like. It's so dumb to me to like think about it now, but I don't even know how to explain it. Like I didn't know about social awareness, social issues in the context that I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking all these classes were my first introduction to it. And then being an RA was even a bigger step because at that time we had I think it was like diversity trainings on inclusion, on what diversity means, the cross-cultural, what was it? Um, what does the OC3 stand for? Cross.
Otter Cross Cultural Center.
Yeah. They would go and present, and I was just like it was everything. Like I was like, this is beautiful. Like this is amazing. I've never felt so many things at once. That I felt empowered. I felt angry. I felt smart. I felt seen. And when they came to present, it was just like, holy crap! Like I think I found what I wanted to do. And at that time, my supervisor was Beth Little,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say was my first introduction of why I wanted to do higher ed, because she was an amazing supervisor for so many reasons. And she just made me feel like I was a part of her family. Um, and and she was, not only was she like the first to inspire me, but she was the first like bisexual woman who was in uh in a committed relationship that I've ever witnessed. And so it was inspiring on so many levels to see, the way that she cared for us and the way that she inspired us and motivated us. And like, as cliche as it just made me feel like if I feel seen, I have to continue to pass this gift on and
Mm-hmm.
make other people feel seen. And so as I continued to dive into like social justice, and systemic racism, and that whole world, it was just like a big rabbit hole. But a lot of the things that Beth taught me, like compassion and empathy and resilience, like stuck through
Mm-hmm.
through whatever.
I think I
Like we
lost
were.
you.
Oh,
I think I
oh
lost you. Yeah, but I can hear you now though. So
no. Okay, yeah. When we learn about all these things, like we need compassion and we need peace and we need to know how to take care of ourselves. And she taught me all of those pillars. And so yeah, so she inspired me to pursue those things, while also taking care of myself. And after that, I met Andrew, my
Mhm.
other supervisor, and he taught me the grit of of what it takes to be in higher education. So I would
Mhm.
say Beth inspired me, and she inspired me emotionally and spiritually, and all to soft gooey things. And then Andrew taught me, like how to stand up for myself, how to be confident, how to be strong, how to deal with bureaucracy in higher education, how to
Mhm.
strategize and be smart about getting the things that you want. And he put a lot of opportunities in front of me. One in particular is so funny. I remember going to this conference, at a hotel, and it was the first time I've ever been to anything like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I wear? How do I act? How do I speak? It was a lot of like older white women. So it was just all brand new to me. When I walked up to the door, the lady greeted me in like a pearl necklace and like a pantsuit. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen pearls in my life. And I was wearing like this blazer, my t-shirt that I got from the Beyonce concert, like ripped jeans. I don't know why I put a blazer on. Like at that point, I should
It's
have
just you throw it on and you're fierce.
Yeah.
That's literally what happens with blazers. For any male, woman, non-binary, you throw a blazer on, you're
Yeah,
fierce. So
got him. I fooled them.
yeah.
And so I sat at this table with, like other older women, and I was, I felt like I was, I was nobody. And they had like 5 forks laid out for me, and all these different cups and all these, plates and stuff. And I was like, what do I do with all this stuff? And so I was just like freaking out. And I go to the bathroom and I text Andrew like, why did you tell me to come here? Like, I don't know what fork to use. Like, I don't know how, like, I don't know how to drink wine. I was not drinking wine at that time. How to drink out of this glass. What do I do? He's like, just drink it. Like, it does not matter. Use whatever fork you want. Like, go back in there, eat your food, just chill. And so he taught me how to be authentic and how, I would say he taught me the survival skills of being in higher ed, to put it short. Have you seen that meme where it's like, you say long story short, but then you like tell the whole story?
Yes. Hey, I mean, it's all good. And I think that others need to know though that Andrew does have a soft, gooey side. Andrew is soft.
He's gonna hate that I said this, but everyone knows that he's a huge crier, like soft boy. And it's funny because when I was at CSUMB and the people that didn't know him were like, oh, Andrew seems intimidating. Like, he seems like, someone that I wouldn't approach. And why would you think that? He's such like, he's such a goofy guy. Like, yeah. And he's literally so inspiring in so many ways. And I wouldn't be able to thank him enough for how far I've gotten in higher ed. And I could easily credit, Beth and Andrew for being my inspiration. But then also being the reminders as to like why I'm here. And of course, like, it all starts with my family. My family always encouraged me to do higher ed. Even when I decided to move to South Dakota, it was never like, why would you do that? Why would you worry about yourself? You have family here. It's just us. It was pure support, even through their sadness, even knowing how painful it is to have their little sister leave once. They always did nothing but support me. And that's a huge privilege that I know not a lot of people are afforded. And that has helped me a lot so far.
Got you. So it sounds like the push to get into higher education specifically was like the support from the family, as well as having those mentors that I think that sometimes we I wouldn't say we undervalue mentors, but I think that we just don't, like, once you have the ability to like self-reflect or like say it over a space where you're just like, wow, they really did shape who I am as a person. And like, like the little bits of tidbits information, like I can definitely speak for like the things that Beth taught me and the things that Andrew taught me. Like I never would have expected until like you're sitting in a meeting and you're like, oh, that's what Andrew was talking about, or that's what Beth was talking about. Little things like that, because like they in conversations, they just drop little nuggets of information, and you never know when it's going to happen or when it's going to pop up. But when it does, you're just like, I know who taught me that, or I know who said that. And that's awesome.
Yes, exactly. And especially now that I have my own team, The first year where I was first learning things, like I would do everything to embody what like Beth taught me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it was pure compassion and just pure, love, and that was so great. And little by little I started to let go. I'm like, all right, now I need to trust myself. They saw things in me, my mentors believed in me,
Mm-hmm.
things, yes, to take their teachings with them, but also to trust myself to do things my own way. And I'm hoping that in that way, it continues to go on, that inspires someone else. And
Yeah.
mentorship is so powerful. It's, I think a lot of us say, or a lot of us would credit our mentors, not completely credit, but yeah, like appreciate
Mm-hmm.
our mentors for where we are now, because they were some of the few people to see us and see our potential, and put opportunities in front of us. But one of the things that I value about mentorship so much is the mutual like learning that you get,
Mm-hmm.
especially with someone like Andrew. I know he's not to say that I've taught him so much, but he has mentioned, how helpful I have been in certain situations and the perspective that I've provided. And now that I'm, growing in my professional career, I'm starting to see the same, like how much students think I provide for them, but how little they know how much they
They
provide for
provide for
me.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got
And
you. No,
so
that's very true.
it's
It's
so
very
dope.
true.
Like it is, sometimes you just want to like, I wish I could show you, like, I wish I could take this feeling out of me and show you how much you've inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like when it was us, like it's so hard for us to believe how special we are. And
Mm-hmm. Just,
so
taking it back to sitting in the UC ballroom of just listening to all of the different presenters that came in and did our RA trainings and stuff like that. So, we made it, but we still got a long way to go.
yeah, it's
So
2 weeks, 2 weeks. Some would say too long, but
got you.
they were great.
All right. So then
Yeah.
the next question that I have for you is it's a loaded question. So what makes you happy? And thinking about one thing from higher ed and then one personal thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember when I was listening to the one with Tony. I was like, I knew he was gonna say Harlem, and that made me laugh so much because I want to adopt a dog soon, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it'll happen. And I'm excited for those little moments of joy. But that is definitely a loaded question. Just even like dissecting what happiness means to me, and knowing that it doesn't look the same for everyone, because I used to compare my happiness to others and think like, I that's not making me happy, so I must not be happy. What's making them happy is not making me happy, so I
Mm-hmm.
must be doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my journey to happiness has been so long. When I was, I don't know, 13, my sisters moved out and it was just me and my dad. And at that time I was suffering from like really terrible depression. And at that time, like I didn't know what was happening. And at that time, neither did my family. None of us were aware of the repercussions of you know dealing and battling mental illness. And we all didn't know how to cope, and we credited a lot to being a rebellious teenager, or
Mm-hmm.
so many things. But none of us knew how to handle it, and so I battled it for a really long time, which was one of the reasons why I wanted to leave to college. It was to get out of that just toxic space that I was in, and my home environment, my home situation with my dad. And so I left with the idea that once I left this environment, I would leave all that trauma. And unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
that is not true. And you take it with you most of the times. And so I did take it with me to
Mm-hmm.
college, packed it up in my little suitcase, it snuck its way in there. And for a long time, I left it in there thinking like, oh, I have all these new things. I have all these new friends, these new classes, these new experiences, this new RA position. This change must be good for me. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Like in my senior year, it was really bad too. I suffered from like suicidal ideation, and it was just terrible, just so bad. And I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to deal. Um, and it got a little bit better for a while, and then it didn't, and then it did, and then it didn't. Like a lot of it does. And it sucks because like a few bad days turned into a few bad weeks, and then a few bad months, and it was just a bad life. And before I knew it, I was living a bad life for almost all of my teen years and my college experience. And it was just, I didn't know anything else. And it wasn't until I moved here to South Dakota that it was at an all-time low. Like I was crying all the time. I was alone. Of course, I had Andrew, my supervisor, who was a huge help in the office, but a lot of learning experiences happened during that time where I needed support, and my only support was my family, who was far away. So it was just me. And so I suffered a long time. And after just like a few wake-up calls, I was like, okay, all right, I don't feel like I'm ready to get help, but I'm going to do it. I don't feel like I'm mentally in the space to get better, but I'm going to go on autopilot and just do it. I know this is what I'm supposed to do, so whatever. So I went to go see a physician, and I started antidepressants, and I've been taking them for a few months, and it's been and this is in no way like steering anyone to take antidepressants or to nap, but for me they have been a huge help in allowing me to feel joy and take a break from all the anxiety and depression, and just be and actually experience happiness and be present in it. And so now that I'm able to breathe again and be able to just be still, all that to say, I love being outside, and I love just, like I said, sunlight really does inspire me. Like just going out in the morning and just not even doing anything active, but feeling like the sun on my face is just refreshing, and it makes me feel really centered. Like I mentioned in my bio, I love doing yoga, and the way that it just, I used to, and this reminds me when I would see you in the gym powerlifting, but I used to go to the gym, and I used to think that made me feel powerful. And each time that, I lifted a little bit more and I squatted a little bit more, I felt more empowered. But now that I'm doing yoga, it's a little bit, it's not easy, but it's not seen as, like as intense as powerlifting, but like in stretching my body and, being intentional about the way that I breathe and, moving slower has really helped ground me as well. I've tried meditating, but I don't think I'm there yet.
No, that's a very that's a very thing. What am I trying to say here? That's a very good thing to point out, is that it's not necessarily like a you try it once and you have it down. Like it's kind of like something you have to try and you have to like work on, and you owned it too. You're like not ready for that, and which is true. So,
and there was a season in my life where I was like, I could be at peace in my mind, but like you said, there's times like, this is not going to work, but I've gotten the opportunity with help and therapy to have these buffet of things that I can try. So when one's not working, all right, what is? When I have a long day, I can't come home to read like Brene Brown or my book on codependency because I just can't absorb it. Like it's too much. So I need to throw on Netflix, and I need to scroll on TikTok for an hour. I do. And there's some days where I do have the energy to dig into a book and write and, study. Like it's just depending on the day. And like you said earlier, like the goal isn't to be happy, is to be at peace. And that's what I'm learning, is that each day, like wherever I'm at, like this like I should not try to be meeting this high goal of happiness. I need to be meeting myself wherever I'm at that day and be okay with that. And when I was depressed, like I couldn't see better days, so it felt there was no use in trying. Like, why would I try going for a run? Why would I try doing yoga? Nothing's gonna change. But now that I've gotten an opportunity to feel joy, and hold it, like I know that the bad days are gonna pass and that I'll be able to experience it again. So during the bad days, I do what I can, and however that shows up.
Yeah.
And so yeah, having those little buffets of things outside of work, even is when my plants like grow a new leaf, like I'm thriving. And it's also really rude because I went home for 2 weeks and I forgot to water them, and I was like, bro, like I'm gonna come back and they're gonna die, like they need me, like just very like self-centered, like I'm so important to them. But I came back and these plants were thriving and I was crushed. I was like, well, it just, yeah. But yeah, those bring me joy. Inside of work, I would say that's a tough one. There's so many. And then there's so not many.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah. I just don't want to go for the cliche ones because yes, it is the students, all those dope interactions where you get to authentically connect and relate. And then I just don't feel like people say enough, like sometimes it also sucks, like you don't have the best interactions with students, and no one talks about that.
No, I mean, I think that's and I want to thank you for like one, sharing all this, and also being your authentic. I know that, just as a frame of reference for everyone, that we actually chatted for an hour before we started the podcast, before we started recording. And I want to thank you for like sharing this on the podcast, because I think that's something that when we think about happiness, like I think that it always has to be like, oh, like for a podcast about happiness, I have to be happy to like everything has to be good. But I think it's also very important to highlight the dark times, the times where everything isn't going your way, and like the things that, how you had mentioned, is like even being in like a leadership role, as an RA, that you felt like you have to be you can't be sad, like you have all these people and all these residents and all these students that you have to help and like be there for. And I appreciate you for being your authentic self and saying that like students are amazing and also students can be a challenge, because it's true. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And yeah, it is challenging. I would say in the workplace, sometimes it's things that prove me wrong that make me happy.
okay.
Like when I go into a challenging conversation with a student and I go in with like, this is gonna be freaking terrible. Like I'm not gonna be able to like smoothly, I'm not gonna be able to keep my cool, or it's just gonna go sideways. I'm not gonna get across. I'm not gonna get my point across. And then it goes awesome, like it goes amazing, and the students are understanding, and yeah, and it goes well. And yeah, those like small yeah, those small moments where I'm like, why did I think that, or why did I think I was so right? Yeah, those bring me joy, because it makes me feel like you don't need me to thrive, like you're fine the way that you are, and that eases the savior, not the savior complex, but like the need to feel needed in me. And yeah, I mean, I always used to struggle with like, how do I make myself indispensable, and how do I make myself valued? And if I left, I want to feel like, oh, I miss Jackie and she was so important to us, and da, da, da.
Mm-hmm.
And lately I've been like, no, I don't want that, because I don't want to feel responsible for, other people's happiness or other people's success. And they are more than capable of, providing that to themselves. And so when students prove me wrong and they show me what they're capable of, like that also grounds me, and that also reminds me that, although although we react and we live as we're the center of the universe, like we're not. And it's kind of relieving in a sense.
Mm-hmm. No, because I think that like it gives you that like the happy balance or the happy medium between like the feeling of needing to help in and step in and help someone,
Yeah.
compared to doing something small like having a conversation and then like having that student be like, no, yeah, I did do these things, they were wrong, and like I'm gonna do the best to not come back or not to be in this situation again. And you're
Yeah.
just like, oh well, I started the conversation and then they took over and now here we are. So, and it also kind of gives you that feeling of that, like we had talked about expectations beforehand too, of that, like if you just ease your expectations, then like everything is just so much
Mhm.
better because you don't have that, like that added additional stress, or like the need to, like you had mentioned, of like when I leave, they better be like, wow, we just lost Jackie.
Yeah.
Whereas like, if you take that expectation away, then you just, everything is so much better. You feel lighter, like, you don't have that 1,000-pound weight on your back,
Yeah.
that you did before, that you created from yourself. And it's just, it happens. And it's awesome to hear that
Yeah.
that's, you've reached that point. Because I was the same way. Like everything that you had said was, that's exactly how I felt. And it's nice to hear someone else go through it and also be on the side of, that's like, I don't have to do that anymore. I can
Yeah.
just I can just be Jackie.
Yeah.
So
And that's enough. Like,
mhm,
students will appreciate that you show up in the way that you show up, and like you mentioned, authentically, like that's okay too, that they don't have to wear themselves out or be on all the time to be great and to be worthy. And that's also my joy, when they realize I don't owe you guys anything. I want to show up because I want to show up, and because I love, not because I want to prove myself. And when they get to that point, I'm like, yes, like you go, like you
mhm,
go. And that's, I mean, one of the other things that brings me joy lately has been, launching this first generation support program with, all these programs with, collaborating with the counselor on campus, the academic center on campus. And we had our first meeting maybe like a week ago, and having the students share about the exact same things that I went through was just like, I hope that they are hopeful that they can get to the other side. And I remember someone describing what imposter syndrome was, but not knowing how to name it. And to be able to give the students the tools and the gifts that I was given to name what imposter syndrome was like, yes, like now you don't have to feel like it's just you, or this feeling is, weird, or you shouldn't be having it. Like it's studied upon, like it's so normal, and it's not your fault. It's systemic oppression, and all these
mhm.
things. And yeah, that's beautiful to me too. So to see them, not only to see them happy, but to see them empowered, and even on their crappy days, to see them, be hopeful is also dope.
Nice. No,
Yeah.
that's, I have nothing to say. That was great. That was awesome. That was awesome. So the next question that I have for you is, what keeps you resilient in the face of some of the challenges that you have faced, whether that be budget cuts, stress from the pandemic, any possible thing.
OMG. Resiliency. That's a hard one.
I know that we had talked about this too beforehand too.
Yeah. What keeps me resilient? Oh, that's so tough. Because for a long time, I didn't think that I was resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And that may have been because I had my quarrels with depression and all the internal dialogue that happens when you go through that is like, you're not worthy, you're not, you're not gonna make it today, or your work sucks, or it's not as good as someone else's. So I think I'm still working on it. And it's a lot of trust falls with myself. Um, and it's a lot of proving myself wrong that I can do really cool things, and that I can get through the day even though I'm sad. So I would say small victories are what keeps me resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whether it's all right, I'm so tired, but I'm gonna wash my face tonight. That proves to me like, oh, tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'm gonna feel good because I wash my face, and it's, yeah, whatever. Um, yeah, and I would say again, my family has been through so much, and they are all so amazing. And when I think about it, just the power of their stories, I think, pushes me forward. And the history of my family, they worked all their life, and not that I don't want that for myself, but I don't just want that for myself. And I love what I do and I love working, but I also want to be spiritually fulfilled and emotionally fulfilled. And even though the days get hard, and higher education can be trying, like, I just want more. I want more than they had, and I want you know future generations in my family to have more of that, to have more happiness and more joy, and be able to be present, be able to feel like their role in life is more than just work and what they do and what they provide to others. um so yeah.
No, I think that you were touching on a lot of amazing points, because I think that when you think about kind of like going through and breaking generational the patterns that happen in generations, I think that it takes a lot of resiliency, and it takes a lot of reflection, and having those conversations with yourself that aren't, rainbows and unicorns. Like they're challenging conversations to have. They're sometimes it's changing the perception that everyone has of you. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that I think specifically about like how Jim Carrey says that, like, when you take your mask off, like that's the start of it. Because like depression, like what you've talked about, and what we talked about before this, is I think that it's so, just washing your face
Mm-hmm.
is a simple thing when you think about that. You don't have everything, like the whole weight of the world on your shoulders, but like just doing something as simple as that is the biggest victory in the day. And we're so focused on getting like productivity and like doing all the things, and I think that being real with yourself, like you had mentioned, and also having that support from family, I think is key. um, so
Yeah. And I mean, I was talking to my coworker Rachel about it on, the way that Brene Brown describes, those big courageous moments of, that are super grandiose and everyone can see them and they're visible. But then more about those little courageous moments that nobody sees. Like I I recently not recently, but I went through my first breakup, and I have always wanted to write, and I always felt like, I could write. I thought that I or anything, but I've
I
always
think
loved it. Oh,
you froze on me, sorry.
yeah. Honestly, my university's Wi-Fi, not the best, but they're trying. But yeah, and I've always wanted to write, and it hasn't been till recently that I've been in the headspace where I could write, where I could feel all of my emotions, and I was pushed to write. And so I did, and I wrote my first poem. And after, I was like, holy crap, like I did it. And I shared it with maybe like three of my closest friends. And I was like, look at this is amazing. And you can tell me if it sucks, like you can tell me, whatever. And I was ready for them to tell me, this is cringy, like this is so melodramatic. And I still felt like, wow, in those moments of my heartbreak where I felt so crushed and so small, like I made something beautiful out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that I'm out of those, those tough moments, but again, I proved myself wrong. I did do it, and I read it aloud as a spoken word, and halfway I was like crying through it, and it, I had my candles on. It was profound. It was neat, and I was like, this feels and it's so funny. It feels melodramatic, but I'm like, oh my God, I just feel like this is an out of body experience. I can't believe I did this. And I made something beautiful out of something that's not. And I'm still doing it. So that encourages me to think that, I can continue doing that. And I have the strength to pull myself from dark places.
Yeah, no, spoken word poetry is beautiful and comes from a dark place, and it's still, that's snaps to you, honestly, snaps to you, because that's awesome, and that's an amazing accomplishment, so snaps to you. So um so what are some of the ways, I know you've talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the ways that you practice self-care to stay on your A game?
Yeah, my A game. um I mean, yeah, a lot of what I mentioned is yoga, reading. I love to read, is definitely not a form of escapism. It's how I deal with a lot of it puts the language to, the emotional turmoil that I'm going through. It helps me figure a lot of stuff out in all different arenas of my life, whether it's social justice or my family life, or like we were talking about earlier, codependency. And when I really need to get in my feels, like I'm reading poetry. And so reading really helps me dig into my emotions in ways that I wouldn't be able to by myself, like just sitting with them. Um, and recently, my sister has really been encouraging me to watch like sermons online. I bought a Bible, and growing up, I was never the best practitioner of religion. I would take my books to church, and my dad would get so mad at me. And I would read it was like Junie B. Jones or some random stuff, or I would play in the back with kids. And during catechism class, I would be like crushing on like different kids in my class, and not paying attention to the word at all. So now that I'm older and I'm redefining what faith is in my life, and I'm not, it's not comfortable at all, and it's the least area that I feel the most comfortable in. Like even the language that Christians use, I'm like, this sounds weird in my mouth. It doesn't sound like me, but it's still really beautiful, and that has been helping me a lot lately, in reconnecting with my relationship with God and what that means to me. And like I said, meditating, not there yet. Yoga, great. I'm still trying to work out. I think with so much that has been going on, I haven't been doing it as much, and I get home like exhausted and tired, and I don't really have the energy for it. But I just got an Apple Watch, so I'm trying to close my rings.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that I'll start again.
Okay, got
Yeah.
you. No, and I think that's something that you're touching on too, is that like you talked about this beforehand, like every day is going to be different. So
Mhm.
like even like when you think about like the happiness, like meeting where you're at in that day, like even thinking about the things that you need to do for like practicing self-care. Self-care can look like different, across any day that you have. So it might be having the ability or having the energy to go and work out, or it could be sitting on the couch reading a book. It could be, anything along those lines. But I think that it has to do with, like you mentioned, and like what you were talking about is like what you need in that moment and what you can fill your cup up in that moment.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of forest bathing?
I have not.
Your, your face.
I, I have not. I have not. I honestly, I think that was just a little bit of my own ignorance, because I was like, is that a South Dakota thing? Like, is that?
No. So that was I was like, I don't, there's a particular person when I think of doing forest bathing.
Okay.
But it's not what it sounds like. It's when you like go out in nature and you just like look at all like the symmetry of leaves, or you lay in a patch of grass, or you go out for a hike, or you're just in the forest with nature. That's pretty.
Okay. Okay.
And I like to be outside, and I'm like, is that the same thing? Like, I didn't know y'all had this. Like, so
I mean, I remember going to like up and down the coast and like
yeah,
and doing experiencing that, or like going to like Point Lobos
yeah,
and things around that. I've never heard of that, but I mean, I do appreciate getting lost in nature, because I think it's
yeah.
one of the most tranquil things that you can possibly do, that you have the ability to like. I think when we talk about disassociation, I think we talk about like
Mm,
going on a binge of Netflix, or going on your phone and scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, going on like watching YouTube videos, or whatever it is. But I
yeah.
think that it's so euphoric to disconnect and be in that environment of just nature. So I've never heard of forest bathing. I don't know if I can get behind it, like saying that phrase. It's now in the vocabulary and the vernacular, but
It's
yeah,
not
that
it's not
face.
proponent, but it's something.
I told you that in confidence.
Well, technically, Tony said it. Okay, so
Tony did say it. Yes. So for everyone that's listening, it's not proponent with an E, it's proponent with an O. I will say this again. I have a master's degree.
all very
I
qualified,
know
but
some words. I don't know all the words, and I'm still learning to grow. So here we are. But the last question that I have for you is, what is one piece of advice that you live by in your practice?
yeah, for myself, um, it's my advice to myself, because I used to be guilty of giving advice when it wasn't needed, and I try to stop doing that now. But the advice that I go by now is probably aligning my actions and my practices just with what I've experienced in my past, what I'm experiencing now, and what I want to experience in the future. So taking into consideration, the way that I grew up, is the way that I act now aligning with the values, the positive values that my family instilled in me. I used to have bad dreams that I would go back home and my sisters would be like, "We don't know who you are anymore. Like you've changed. Like this isn't you." And that used to scare me. And I used to think I never want to be someone that my family doesn't recognize. And of course, that's different for everyone. Um, but I've always wanted to stay grounded to my family and be an inspiration to my nieces and nephews. And so that helps guide the way that I show up now, in the way that I talk to people. Like I mentioned earlier, like I try not to code switch as much because I don't want to exert my energy so much on being who people are comfortable with, that, you know, like when I get home, then I won't have energy to do stuff for me. I won't have energy to run my bath or take care of myself because I've been code switching all day. And if I go back home, like that tool isn't useful for me there. Like my family will pick up on that. And so yeah, that inspires my actions now that I'm here in school. And then my present, being present when I'm around and listening and leaning into conversations, whether it's in conversations with my coworkers. Sometimes I go into the office so focused on getting my work done and getting my checklist checked off that I'm missing. My coworkers are so funny. Like, oh my God, I love them. And sometimes they're talking and I'm like, why can't I just sit here and laugh with them or be with them? Instead, I'm irritated and I want to get things done before 5 and all these things. So I'm trying to practice just like being with them and kicking back and, you know, talking about all the animals that we want to adopt, and my coworker's son, who is so cute, and Andrew and all his dog stories too. And even with my students, when I have one-on-ones with them, just being there for them helps me practice what I preach, which is, you know, I want to be here for the students. Well, how do I do that? By showing up and being in tune with what they're saying. And then for my future, you know, I'm not perfect. Obviously, no one's perfect, but you know, there is a vision of who I want to be, and I'm not there yet. And I'm happy where I'm at, but I want to continue pushing further. And that inspires me to not be complacent or not stay where I am, and engage in uncomfortable conversations, or push myself to do things that I've never done, like writing, to end up where I want to be and to live a fulfilling life. So all those three things in combination help guide me.
Got you. No, that was that was amazing. That was once again, that was amazing. That was, yeah, I have nothing to say for that. So that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think it's awesome to have that ability to, as someone that knew you from CSUMB, and to like, and I know that we haven't really talked a whole lot, but it's awesome to hear where you're at from like the things that I didn't even know that you were going through. And I think that's what we talked about beforehand, was that like you really have no idea what people are going through, but like I think it makes you so proud of who you are after you've gone through something. And no one has the ability to tell you what, if it was small, big, whatever. I think it just, when you have the ability to self-reflect and like say that, like, you know, I was here, I'm here now, and this is where I want to be. I think it makes you, one, it makes you super humble, but two, it also just like gives you this like euphoric feeling that I came from a point where I was at the lowest of my life, and like now that person, what that person needed back then is like who I am now. And that like, you know, and I always, sometimes TikTok is a strange app, and I will say that it's interesting. It's interesting, some of the things that you see, but I always like, there's one video in particular where it's like, where people talk about like if they've ever had a hard day, or like I see it a lot on like the fitness journeys, but like seeing how like I do the things that I do today because of who that person that I was beforehand, or the things that I did beforehand. And it's so amazing to hear other people go through, like, that have gone through something, to like see how they've overcome it, or who they are today. And it's awesome. So
yeah, not only that, I was reading Chanel Miller's book, and she was talking about how people are in love with success stories because they get to be with them in their happiness, and it feels like, yay, like you made it, congrats to you, I can do it too. but like we were talking about earlier, nobody really wants to ask when you're in the pits. Like nobody is really wanting to sit with you through that, and nobody truly, is comfortable with, listening to what you're going through, because it's so scary to be present during those moments. And so that's why, like we were talking about earlier, I think it's so important to, talk about the crappy stuff and talk about the dark days, because not only does it normalize it, it releases you from all the shame that you feel when you keep it to yourself. Because now, like, you can't tell me anything. Like, of course I know what it is like to be depressed. I'm not lazy, like I'm not unmotivated. Like, that was crappy, and I would never make anyone feel that way for being depressed. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I think once you have the ability to take a step back and like see that other people are going through a lot of other things,
Yeah.
and it kind of gives you that ability to, we were talking about emotional intelligence and that self-awareness piece, that like, having the ability to take a step back and just, okay, this was one instance, like I got upset, or like I showed anger, like now let's reflect on it and like let's move forward to like have that growth mindset. And it's a challenge. It's not easy. It is not easy. And I think that's the part that we talk when we like growing up and like seeing a lot of the things that like we didn't have. Like we were talking about the five love languages, and how like the differences and like the things that you didn't have growing up, or like the things that you are a part of your love language. And like I think that's just, it's interesting to reflect on it and have conversations with people about it. And like you had mentioned, have the dark conversations, sit with it,
Yes, with trusted people, because not everyone deserves to hear that story, like,
Mhm.
and that's how so many adverse reactions happen. Like, there may be someone in your circle that's not the best person to share these things with, and it just goes poorly. So really, really build trust with your support system, and know that, whatever you say to them it's going to be welcomed and valued, and you're going to be loved, and you're going to be made to feel safe. So that's important too.
Yeah. And on that note, I have nothing left to say. So Jackie, I want to thank you again, for being here, and for sharing all your experiences, and bringing a different side into happiness in higher ed. I think it's better to be real than to perform,
Yeah.
and say that you have to be a certain way to do stuff, you know. So again, I want to thank you. And for our listeners at home, just go into the spiel again. Don't forget to follow and or like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, as well as follow us on Spotify podcast, or yeah, Spotify, and then Apple Podcasts. It is what it is. But thank you again. And do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, thank you. I appreciate you. I mean, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome of, what will I say? What makes me important? But I appreciate you for also making me feel comfortable and allowing me to feel authentic, or giving me the space to be authentic. So
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. But all right, well, I hope everyone has a good rest of their day. All right, bye.